It's 2:00. So I think we're just going to begin this beautiful celebration of a wretch like me. My name is Heidi Sigmund Cuda. I am the co-author of this incredibly, profoundly beautiful book that many of you have had a chance to read. I'm here with Marcia Fritz, who is the woman who was paying attention to what she noticed Judy's relationship to food was. And so this beautiful book exists because Marcia Fritz was paying attention and she started asking questions. And we have our star, Judy Ray, who is going to be chiming in and answering some questions. Hello, Carol, welcome. We are so happy to see so many friends of a wretch like me, family members of Judy Ray, friends of Marcia's, and friends of mine. And as we get things started, I wanted to thank our publicist, Susan von Segern, for putting this together. I want to thank Anna MacGregor, staying up late all the way in the UK. She is going to tell us about her organization, Safer Spaces, and she is also going to be helping co-host this event. And we're going to be delving into some of the issues of abuse that actually Judy was willing to share with us. But first, I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us in this celebration. I've been a writer my whole life. That's a long time, many decades, and never had the opportunity to work on something as profoundly meaningful as Judy's book. And now I'm already getting choked up. Good cue, Marcia, on the tissue. And I want to thank my partner, Marcia Fritz. We have formed a media group together, Coral Winds Media, and none of this would be possible without Marcia's vision and tenacity and heart. So I just want to make sure that I cover all my gratitude bases. And then I'm just going to do a couple items of business. One is I have my friend Dan Brown, all the way from Newfoundland, who's helping run security. Since this link was posted publicly, sometimes Zoom can be interrupted by nefarious actors, and Dan is helping me be on the lookout for that. We've also taken a lot of security measures to dial that down. In addition, I am recovering from COVID, so if I have a coughing fit, you'll know why. I will mute myself and drink some water and be right back. But so far, so good. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just open by reading a little passage from A Wretch Like Me. Then I'm going to pass the mic to Marcia Fritz. Then we'll pass the mic to Judy Ray. And I am going to go ahead and read what I think is, I've written many books before, never anything like this. But I want to say, when I wrote this first page, I immediately called my son and I read it to him. And my son said, and my son's a writer, and he said, "Mic drop, Mom." And I knew that we were on the right path. Hi, Gina. I love your smile. Okay, so we're going to read just the very beginning of part 1, chapter 1. Part 1, Hunger Pains. Chapter 1, Tumbleweed Blues. Quote, "She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere." Robert Browning, My Last Duchess. Judy gazed up at her father and thought him beautiful. She watched him as he put kohl on his eyebrows to make them darker. He ran the kohl through his mustache and accented his eyelashes. He'd already greased up his black hair and primped it to create a soft wave that swept high off his forehead, adding another 2 inches to his 6'1" frame. That man was something else, she thought. Judy was hungry, so she drank him in. Her father grabbed a dirty towel and ran it over his teeth. His teeth were crooked and his gums were rotted, but Judy loved his smile. His teeth were a tell. As if to memorize him, she watched her father carefully, the broad shoulders, a slim waist, all his parts. She knew them. She knew. Once he walked out the front door of her family's one-room shack in the mining town of Kemmer, Wyoming, it was hard to say when he might be back. Her tiny mother, all 4'11" with her frail girl body, was sobbing on the bed the family shared. Her desire to go dancing with her handsome husband had earned her a good beating. She had begged him to take her, but he had decided to escort her mother's younger sister instead. Judy, who was 4, knew what was coming. More hunger days. Like a tumbleweed, her father blew out the door. He would roll and roll and just keep on rolling, dancing from town to town, spreading his seed like a tumbleweed, base brittle, designed to snap so as to roll on down the highway, procreating. His 1938 Chevrolet Master Deluxe with its rear suicide doors was 6 years old, but still reasonably fast. And he was in a hurry. Her father was in a hurry to drink, dance, fight, and in that order. Judy watched her tiny mother grab her empty purse and set out after him like she did every time. Judy watched her sad, sad mother walk down the dirt road, getting smaller and smaller and smaller until she disappeared entirely. It would be weeks before Judy would eat a meal, if at all.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
thank you. That moves me every time.
Me
And
too. Me too.
I'm so glad, Judy. So now we are going to ask Marcia Fritz, the co-author of this book, who drove this project from beginning to end, who had the vision, my partner in this wonderful project, to read us a review that touched her heart from one of our dozens of reviews on Amazon, thanks to this wonderful team that we put together.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun on this book, but oh, that's really getting me. Thank you for my suggestion. But this particular review was from a woman that that is okay with me reading it today, Lynn Siebert. And she wrote, the title of her review was "The book's content will pierce your heart and your gut without your consent." And she writes, "I just finished the book. I read the intro, abandoned what I was reading on Kindle, and in spite of us being in the middle of a very expensive vacation week in Key West, not to be wasted on reading novels, I was unable to put the book down, Marcia. I found your book to have an unexpected, compelling story, well written with a creative format that stole my interest and would not let it go. Thank you for what you have done for society through your persistence, along with Heidi's, in producing this treasure. This is a movie must. Your masterpiece needs to be required reading in every school's curriculum that offers degrees in social work. If A Wretch Like Me had been available to me back in the mid-60s, as a very naive young woman fresh out of UCLA with a bachelor's of arts degree in sociology and just hired by Los Angeles Department of Social Services, I might not have burned out after 6 short years and quit. To me, it was obvious that experts in sociology and psychology who were providing us with on-the-job training hadn't a clue. And I don't think 50 plus years later, our tax money thrown at social services has moved the needle at all. If Judy's story had been available then, my life might have been totally different. Congrats to you and to Heidi and Marcia. You have a real winner on your hands.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh my gosh, that was one of the amazing reviews. And thank you, Marcia. That was quite beautiful. And yes, of course, we are already blessedly hearing from friends in the industry who think this would be a great film. And it deals not only with so many incredible, powerful issues, but it also is a great opportunity for multiple actresses of different ages who are women of color. And I think that's something Hollywood can always benefit from. So Judy, if you have your book on hand.
I do.
As Marcia and I were doing the interviews, we found many incredible things about Judy. One of them being her lack of self-pity. She just accepted things as they were, but also this incredible sense of humor. And sometimes Judy would start a sentence with something so profound and then it would flip to something uproariously funny. So at the very beginning of the book, I combined some of Judy's quotes, and I'm hoping you might read us a few of those, Judy.
Well, I like, this is what I like on hope. I always managed to find my own sunshine beyond the clouds. There was always a little hope there. I always looked to be positive because I had to be, because of my children. You know, you can't be crying and upset and stuff like that when you have 5 kids. You have to be happy. And I felt that. But then also I love where it said on my father, because he was so destructive and just so disturbed, but I just loved him. I loved him. And this is what I say. I said, my father had an amazing voice. He could sing and play the harmonica. He was everything a man could be. He was such a shame. It was such a shame that such an amazing man who had the looks, who could fly planes, he could do anything, had such a devil on his back, didn't have feelings for his kids. All he thought about was himself, his pleasure, women and alcohol and dancing. That's all he wanted.
Wow. Well, we're looking so forward to talking more about that during this incredibly profound hour that we're going to spend together. Judy, thank you so much for that. I'm getting choked up because I just am revisiting all the beautiful interviews that we did together. And quite frankly, I never knew what you were going to say next. Now we are going to turn to our co-host and panelist, Anna MacGregor. She's going to tell us a little bit about Safer Spaces, and then you're going to read a portion of the book, your favorite portion or a favorite portion.
Yeah, hi. It's difficult to pick a favorite bit, actually. There were so many pieces of it, Judy, that resonated with me personally, and then also in the work that I do across a lot of the different stories that I've heard about. So I run Safer Spaces now, which is a company that specializes in sexual violence and harassment at events and festivals. So the prevention of that, teaching bystander intervention, so how to get people to step up in those instances when they see something and to be peer support to others. We also train professionals in how to identify domestic abuse, sexual violence, and we focus very heavily from a gender-informed perspective, so violence against women and girls, to really try and infiltrate every area of our society to kind of redesign cultural and social norms that underpin the violence and harassment and sexual abuse of women and girls globally. So that's what we do. So yeah, I was in an abusive relationship for well over a decade of my own life, which is what led me into this area of work. So reading your book, and there's so much in here that I can personally kind of say, oh yeah, I can really feel that right now, or I can really relate to it. So I picked a section and it starts, it's called Alone. I haven't read out loud since I was at school, so bear with me. So for many women in abusive marriages, the burden is something they carry in secret. But Judy had witnesses, and those witnesses turned away from her troubles. I felt so helpless and alone, so utterly helpless. It was degrading. Being beat up is the most humiliating, degrading feeling. I attracted the attention of men, and sometimes it was unwanted. Jerry was moonlighting as a bartender at the American Legion Hall, and his boss in construction was there that night. A man asked me to dance, and I made the mistake of saying yes. He whisked me behind a curtain near the jukebox, and I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I danced with him. I had a hairpiece on top of my head, and as soon as we got in the car, Jerry Farley ripped my hairpiece off and beat the shit out of me. I was crying and all bloody, and Jerry drove to a gas station. With blood dripping down my face, I looked out of the window, and there was a cop driving slowly by right next to us. I looked over at the cop, pleading with my eyes to stop and do something. Arrest my husband, do something. And the cop looked at me, and he didn't do nothing. He just drove on by. That weird guy who asked me to dance followed us all the way to Clark Holmes. He stood outside my window that night, trying to get me to come out. After Jerry passed out on the bed, I went outside and I begged him to leave me alone. Can't you see I just got beat because of you? I told him. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. He had climbed up into our window. I begged and pleaded with him to leave, and he finally did. That man could have gotten me killed that night. Judy learned to conceal her bruises and try as she might to live within the happy moments of her life. After a beating, Jerry was often contrite. He would buy her gifts, sometimes jewelry, sometimes lingerie, and he would make promises he wouldn't keep. The public beatings were particularly humiliating for Judy. We were at our neighbours right next door, and I had all 3 of my kids by then. We left them at home while we were visiting the neighbours. Jerry Farley was in a bad mood, and we were sitting on the couch in their home. There were 2 other couples there that night. This one guy was blocking his view and he was arguing with him. Jerry had been drinking and his rage was building. He got mad at this guy for no real reason, and instead of taking it out on him, he took it out on me. I'd been wearing moccasins and I'd taken them off because I always ran around barefooted. As they started arguing, Jerry looked over at me and said, "Let's go." So I got my moccasins and started putting them on. And it takes a minute to put moccasins on. I said, "Let's go." He grabbed me by my hair in front of the neighbor couple and dragged me outside. He threw me down the stairs and onto the ground, and the neighbors closed the door. I was crying and screaming. He kicked me in the stomach and he kicked me in the face. And then he went into the house and locked the door. I was crying and dripping blood outside the door and trying to get into my home. And Deborah, my oldest daughter, her bedroom was right by the door. She came to the door and said, Mummy, are you all right? Daddy, open the door." And he wouldn't open the door. And I sat there and cried. Finally, he opened the door and let me in. It makes me cry to think about it. Anger was Jerry's problem, and alcohol accelerated the violent episodes. He got a different second job working at a bar called the Eagles. As her husband came home later and later, Judy began to feel smaller and smaller. When she found the courage to confront him, he told her he was just playing poker with the boys. Judy discovered the truth. Came to find out he had a girlfriend for 7 years, plus other ones he was screwing around with. I learned later that at dinner we had, when he was sitting across from a friend, he took his shoes off and was playing with her under the table with his foot. I didn't know at the time. He had me so under his control, I was like a puppet. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. He was a good father periodically. When he was sober, he would take us camping, and then he would drink. When he got the bartending job, things got really bad for me. I cried in front of the kids often. He got paid every 2 weeks, on the 1st of the month, and he got paid on the 15th of the month. And when he got paid, he did not come home. He stayed at the bar and spent most of his checks. He'd come home with barely enough to feed us. He bought his cigarettes. I wasn't allowed to buy cigarettes, and I did like to smoke. I don't think I even had a purse. Although Judy had accepted her fate, a little plan began to develop. She was going to earn her own money. Once each of her children was in school, Judy got a job. She saw a sign posted outside Babbitt Rose Thriftway grocery store in downtown Flagstaff for a greeter, and she applied for the position. No one was more surprised than Judy when she was hired. I was so shy when I first started working as a greeter at the market. I couldn't look anyone in the eye. My manager told me I had to, so I gathered up all my courage and I did it. It was so hard until one day it wasn't hard anymore. I began to love greeting people. They were so nice to me. It felt good to be around normal people. I had to hide my bruises at work. Sometimes the bruises would be visible. I just showed up and put a smile on. I had the ability to do that. Once the doctor came in and looked at my arm, I knew he knew, but he said nothing. I was used to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, Judy, really stood out for me because I think it's such a familiar part of a woman's experience in an abusive relationship. And I think so many women can relate to that across the board, and that feeling of hiding it and having to put your face on and go out to work and look after your kids. And also, I think all the way through the book and the way that, speaking about your sense of humor and how you've managed what you've been through as a child through adolescence and into adulthood, it's that powerful message that you normalize that. It was so normal to you that abuse was just part of your everyday at every stage. So yeah, that one for me, and personally I've experienced that, where I know people have known I've been in a hospital after taking an overdose, and I could tell the nurse knew, and I wanted to say it and she wanted to ask, but nobody knew how to have that conversation, and that's 15 years ago. So it's timeless, really, that experience.
Judy, when you hear those words read back to you, what goes through your head?
Everything, it's just all the pain coming back. But I don't understand be an abused woman and all these marriage and that, it's hard for me to understand why I put up with it for as long as I did. I mean, I got out, but why? Well, I know, because I had no self-esteem. When your mom tries to sell you and your father wants nothing to do with you but sexual, you know, it's hard to love yourself when your mom's trying to sell you, your dad doesn't want you. It's tough, but you know what? Because of my kids and just because of me, I don't know what it was inside me, God, but I had to go forward and smile, and I did it, and I do it.
You know, what's very beautiful for me to be witnessing this really celebration of your life, as well as this book project, is to see your children here.
Yeah.
To see your beautiful girls.
Yes, my girls.
So I think it's just incredible that they are an example of your perseverance. And I know how close you guys are. So I think that's very beautiful. And something that really resonated with me when you were reading that section was the parallel to what I read and the parallel to then what Judy went through, even down to the detail of the purse. Like that to me was really amazing, as well as the fact that then Deborah, later in the book, in the Hearts and Bones section, retells that story, her oldest daughter, from her point of view of seeing her mother crying and unable to, you know, to come in and worrying about her mom. So it's just the parallels are super profound. Well, Anna, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Do you have any questions of Judy, myself, or Marcia? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I suppose, Judy, to ask you really, at different stages through your life in the book, there are moments where you can feel your realization. There's the moments of realization that happen, like, actually, I'm going to go this time, or I'm going to get a job. I've got a plan. I'm going to leave this person. And I just wonder if there is one overwhelming, poignant time for you that made you go, actually, this is enough now. Like, this cycle has to stop. If you can like pinpoint that.
Yes, absolutely. And I just remember all the time with my children, you know, changing them or feeding them. And I kept crying and I kept saying, why, how am I going to get out of this? Please help me. And the reason that I left him is because he switched. He met a couple and he wanted to switch. And the first time I couldn't do it. But then I thought about it. This man that loved me and was devoted to me wanted to switch with another woman. And that's not in the book, but that's what happened. That's the only reason I divorced him, because I couldn't do it. I tried so hard, so many times, but I just couldn't get out. And that's what men do to you when you're in a relationship. They control you or manipulate you. And one day they're beating you and the next day they're buying me gifts. And I finally, and that was God sent. That's what happened. That's what made me get out of it.
There's a great quote in the beginning of the book that's also in the book that Judy says how God was always there right by her side, walking her into the arms of another loser.
Yes.
But what's beautiful about it is as Judy's life progressed, that the abuse dialed down because she wasn't tolerating that. And she ended up, you know, finding, better partners. And of course, her current partner right now, who's in the background, Bud. The book came to be because Marcia, if you don't mind me saying, she's married to a Vietnam veteran who was a helicopter pilot. Judy is also married to a Vietnam veteran who's a helicopter pilot. Those two buddies would show up together at various annual events. And that is when Judy came into Marcia's life through their husbands. And so yes, you know, I've always liked the fact that this book is a book about perseverance and endurance. And Judy is an example of that. And I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but anyone who read the book can do the math that Judy just celebrated her 80th birthday And I don't know about you guys, but if that's what 80 looks like, then give me some of that.
Thank
You know, her daughters are in great
Thank
great
you.
shape.
Thank you.
So what I would love to do is offer an opportunity for either her daughters to check in and
Yeah.
comment on some of their thoughts, because they were incredibly supportive of their mom through this project. Or if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask of Judy, Marcia, or myself, there's a virtual hand you can raise, or you can wave crazily in the window and maybe somebody will see you. But if anybody would like to either comment on the book or ask a question of any of our panelists. Joel, go ahead and unmute yourself, Joel, and ask your question, and then remute yourself just so the noise doesn't interfere. Here, I will go ahead and ask you to unmute, Joel. Okay, so ask to unmute, and you should be able to now see a button. There you go. Thank you.
There's just a comment on what we've been talking about that it kind of relates to the Judy that I know as my mother-in-law. In the book, at the beginning of chapter 3, if I could read the quote from Victor Hugo, would that be okay?
Please.
Cosette was not very timid by nature. There flowed in her veins some of the blood of the bohemian and the adventuress who runs barefoot. It will be remembered that she was more of a lark than a dove. There was a foundation of wildness and bravery in her. And I think that it's the bravery part that has got Judy through all of this.
Thank you, Joe.
She, I've seen people that have had similar things happen in their lives, and so many of them are just unhappy people, and they don't never get past it. But Judy is a happy person.
Thank you, Joe.
She shows her love to people. It's just she's definitely a brave woman.
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to make that comment. We love her.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you.
You bet.
What a beautiful contribution. What a
Yes.
beautiful share.
Yes.
Wow. I don't know
Thank
how
you.
you're going to top it, but who wants to go next? Because that was really stunning.
Yes.
Dan?
Can I jump in? Hi.
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So hi, Judy. It's really nice to meet you.
Hi. Nice
I
to
was
meet you.
really blown away by like your tenacity and your courage and like how gritty the book is and your honesty. And before Heidi had mentioned about people in the movie industry being interested in it, I was thinking that myself that it would make a way more compelling movie than most of the stuff that I watch. I mean, it's just the stuff that comes out nowadays is so just generic and so whitewashed. And have you given any thought to that? Like how you would react to seeing yourself portrayed in a film?
I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love it. I would. I
have
want my
you
story.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would love it. Want my
do you have
the
any
story
fantasies
out
about
there.
who you would
Yeah.
like to portray yourself?
Yeah. I would like what's her name?
J-Lo.
J-Lo.
Nice
J-Lo.
choice.
No, what's her name?
Jennifer Lopez.
Jennifer Lopez. Yes, yes.
Cool.
Because she has some of the same she has how my body is, and she has nationality like mine, and she loves to dance, and she's happy, and yeah, I do. That would
Very
be
cool.
her.
I hope it happens.
I do
That's
too.
so great.
Thank you.
That's so
Thank you.
great. That's
I would.
phase 2 Marcia and I are working on.
Thank you.
Cool.
Marcia, I would love I didn't realize I had muted myself. I love that. Thank you for asking that question. And that's phase 2 of what Marcia and I are working on, as hopefully getting this movie done now that the book is out. I would love Marcia to share, unless we have somebody else jumping in, I'd love Marcia to share the origins of this book for anybody who didn't read it, what it was when you were at dinner with Judy that you noticed that tipped you off to start asking her questions.
Yeah. We had, yeah, she was this beautiful woman. By the way, her husband and I have had a dancing relationship for many, many years. My husband doesn't like to dance, so I would always dance with Bud. He was a bachelor forever. And finally he shows up with this woman, this beautiful woman, and they're dancing beautifully. I couldn't top that. And I lost my dance partner. And so I was kind of bummed. Anyway, they came to our home one night and we went out to dinner. And I knew that she was a beautiful dancer, a beautiful woman. We had this nice dinner on the river, you know, very nice, not super expensive, but not cheap either, you know, just a normal, beautiful place. And at the end of the dinner, it was a lot of food. And she said, I want to take some scraps home, you know, leftovers. So the guy brings her this styrofoam holder, and she takes everybody's plate and just shoves it all into this one container, like mixed it up. Didn't care if it had half eaten on each of our plates. You know, obviously I'd never seen anybody do that. And so I just said, well, did you grow up on a farm? Because I live on a farm right now. And I thought, well, she's not germophobic, obviously. And so I said, well, did you grow up on a farm? She goes, no, it was just the way I was raised, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then she started to tell me a little bit about her family and about growing up and starving to death. And I was very interested in what she said about how she grew up as a young child with no food in the house. She just told me a little bit that made me extremely interested. And then she talked a little bit about her father and about the molestation. And I just was very interested, and I didn't want to pry, but I'd been looking for a writing project on exactly this type of something real. I wanted to do something about people that normally we don't hear about or read about or see in film. And I said, I'd love to write your book. She just told me enough that I knew that that I really wanted to write her story. And then when she said her father had been murdered, I thought, wow, we've got something here. So, but I didn't know a lot of the stuff as we started to write the book together with Heidi. A lot of the stuff we really didn't know until she didn't get deep at the beginning like she did. And it was really good, Heidi, for you helping me, because I met you at Fox 11 News down in LA, and I know you're a good interviewer. And I really wanted you to be part of this, to really get into the details of Judy's life more than a lot of people are comfortable doing, frankly. In fact, you and I had to kind of sit back and like give ourselves the courage to look at things much more deeply than normally is done.
Yeah.
And we just uncovered so much stuff, and Judy was so good about answering things and being open. It made it easy for us to just look at it. And the book, honestly, at the very beginning is very hard for a lot of readers to read. And if you just got to get through it. But so many of our reviews were readers that said it was hard for me at the beginning because we talked about things that people don't look at. And once you get through it, the opening and the awakening, and that's what I loved about it, is so many attitudes have been changed by this project.
Yeah. A lot of gratitude. That was beautifully put, Marcia, and a lot of gratitude to Judy. We have a theme, as people who've read it knows, about Judy wants to be an angel. Judy wants to go through this life and ultimately be an angel. And there's so many people who already see that you are an angel here on earth, if you are willing to share your truth in that way. And Marcia will tell you, there were times I called her up and I would say, I don't know what to do with this. Like there were things that Judy would tell me that in all my life as a reporter, and somebody who interviewed people and has a pretty good handle on the human condition, there were things that you told me and shared with me that I'd never heard. And Marcia and I kind of made a commitment to just get out of the way of your story and just have you tell your story as you see it and get out of the way. And what a great decision that was, because we're hearing from people, as Anna was talking about, who've experienced abuse, experienced molestation, experienced incest, experienced issues with religion, and all of these things. We are having our own Me Too movement through this book, and I find it to be just a gift to be able to give people something that becomes kind of a safe space. They're like, a wretch like me, yes, I can relate to it. And that's, again, Marcia's tenacity and Judy's courage.
Yeah, like Marcia was saying, and then we went out, and we were, drinking and having fun, and Marcia drew it out of me, and I just told her my story. She just listened, and for some reason it just came all out, and she grabbed it.
Yeah.
And I never thought this would happen. I just was telling my story.
And that it turned out so beautifully. We must give a shout out. I don't know if our friend Wid is here or not. We must give a shout out to our friend Wid, who Susan von Segern, our publicist, brought to my life many years ago, because he has really helped us create this brand and get us positioned where this book is being seen and reviewed. And I buried the lead. We had a special promo, and thanks to many of you on this call, we managed to make it to #1 on 5 lists. And Judy is probably not surprised at the list, but it's depression, codependency, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, personality disorders.
Yeah.
And we're actually very proud of that, because that is part of the conversation that we are hoping continues to be illuminated. And Anna, you have a question.
Yeah, so have I unmuted myself? Yes. I guess this is twofold really. I love the intersectionality that this book shows, especially across the time frame that we're looking at in America. We're seeing sort of dual heritage and dual faiths and the level of poverty, and it touches on so many different issues faced by so many people. And I also love that you as authors were brave enough to not sanitize the language and not filter it, like you said.
Yeah.
But also Judy telling her story, and for you guys writing it, that you showed the cycle of abuse, but not just Judy in your family, seeing it with the parental on parent abuse, parent on child abuse, your own experiences. But you also showed, I think, a lot of the cycles of abuse that was experienced and lived through by the people that were then engaging in abusive behavior. And you really demonstrated the complexity of that, and how, it's very easy, I think, when we look at sexual abuse, domestic abuse, violence against women, where we can kind of try and point, there's a bad person and there's a good person, and it's that simple, and that's the story, and at the end you get strong and it's all over. And actually that's not what happens. There's so much misery and deprivation all over it, across everybody that's involved and how everybody's impacted. And I find it really refreshing to read that story without it being sanitized. I can hear Judy through it. I can hear, your, like you said, your sense of humor, how comfortable you are speaking about your experiences, and also all of the different vulnerabilities faced by all those different people at different times, and how that it all kind of comes together into this big melting pot. I just think that's a really brave decision to make as well, telling it, but also publishing that and just going out really raw. And I think that's probably, it's a brave decision, but it's absolutely the right one.
Wow.
Yeah. It was the right one.
I'm grateful that Judy, because, Marcia and I prepared our first draft, and then we're like, oh God, we're sending it off to Judy. She's going to see it. And your response was so beautiful and embracing of your very beautiful, profound story. And that's why I wrote the shocking and beautiful true story. Because yes, it's shocking for many people what you
Yes.
endured through no fault of your own, but you made it beautiful. And one of the most interesting things that Marcia and I noticed in one of our first reviews was that this is a no blame book. And that's all Judy, because Judy has chosen to embrace love. She's chosen to be an acceptance about who people are in her life. And that was a very big theme that I know that we tried to carry through this book, that people are what they are. And I'm not going to say any more on that because I'd like to read the final paragraph before we end this. But I see one of Judy's very gorgeous daughters, Gina, raising her hand. So Dan, if you can unmute her. Oh, you got it. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hi, Mom.
There
Perfectly,
she is.
perfectly.
No, I just wanted to
My beautiful
touch.
daughter.
No, thanks. I just wanted to just kind of touch on something, because I am her daughter. I wanted to share something kind of funny that with the food thing that we see a lot, because I do see my mom all the time, and we cook dinner, and she comes to my house and she looks, we cook dinner and she's always just like, oh, can I take that home? Oh, are you going to waste that? Oh, don't throw that away. I'll eat it. Then you go to her house and it's still sitting in her fridge a week later. She never eats it, but she can't waste her food. And I think that's something that she's done our whole life. And it just makes me laugh. And she does it to my sister too. And then another thing is just being on the other side of her love. My whole life, everybody has always gravitated towards my mom, my friends, my mother-in-law, and she is just as real and raw in person to everybody that meets her. And she is willing to tell her story to anybody that's willing to listen. And I think our whole life, we've heard bits and pieces. And my sister and I have always been like, gosh, Mom, you really should write this in a book. You really should write this down. We've always tried to have her journal. We've always tried to have her do that. So to see it come to light and just to kind of see it happening, it's kind of surreal, and very appreciative of you guys and doing this for her, because I know it means everything to her and all of us. So thank you.
It does. Thank you, Gina. I love it.
I was going to say, we are appreciative of you. You just met Judy's second youngest daughter, second from the youngest, right? And Gina shared the most beautiful, profoundly last line of the Hearts and Bones section, where you said she still to this day is a starving child, still has that mentality of food insecurity, even though your children have told me that you have a food arsenal that will get through any apocalypse.
If I never need to go anywhere because we have a shortage, I'm going to her house.
So perfect.
Yes. Yeah. That's because of Bud. Bud stocks that fridge. And yes, he does.
We love that. That's really beautiful.
Yes, he does.
I would love to see if anybody else has anything that they would like to share. If Tanya wants to check in, or Deborah, you are now meeting the first of the Farley. There's three Farley children from the oldest. That's right, firstborn. Mm-hmm. And by the way, from Marcia and I to the family, we never expected to have the family embrace the book in the way that you have. So it means a lot to us. So Deborah, the floor is all yours.
I just want to say that I can remember when my mom told me about her story the first time. It's hard. It was hard to look at her and think, oh my God, did she go through all that crap? And it stayed with me for a long time. And I think in some ways it's changed me for the good and the bad, I think. But also, I went through a lot of it with her, with my dad.
Yeah, she did.
And, I swore to myself, I'll never go through this in my life. I won't have anybody beat me like this and treat me like this. And although I've been married 1,000 times,
Like her mother.
I've never had anybody beat me like that. I would never stand for it. So, but I think my mom is just my idol because she's gone through all this and she still laughs and she dances and she has fun. She's just so full of happiness and strength and love that not a lot of people can do this. You know, a lot of people get bitter and old and just bitchy, but not Mom. My mother is just remarkable and I love her. She's taught me a lot and we've went through a lot, all of us. But you know what? I'm proud of you, Mama.
Thank you. Thank you, my daughter. And I'm proud of you. Thank you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies, Heidi and Marcy. You guys have done a great job. I love everything I've learned about you. You guys are on it. She's in good hands.
Yeah.
So
yes, I have. Thank you.
Well, it takes a village, and it was the support of all your children. It was the support of Joel, who helped us help Marcia early on track down really pivotal court records that really helped us tell the story in a way that is just could not have been done without it. And of course, Marcia's CPA background, she's like a forensic investigator. So it's like, you know,
Yeah,
she
no
gets it
kidding.
done. She gets it done.
Yes, she did.
yes,
She did.
And we
Amazing
cannot,
job, Marcy.
we cannot forget the contributions of the husbands, both Bud and Ken, Judy and Marcia's husbands. Ken was our copy editor, and Bud contributed a beautiful section from his heart, which I was very happy to include in the book. And yeah, we have a number of themes that go with this project, dancing on teardrops being one of them. And quick little two things I want to say before anybody else wants to comment before we close things out. I thought it was really important to the integrity of the book for me to go to the places where Judy was born, the places where she lived, and all the, you know, locations, you know, with, you know, the various kind of milestones in your life. And I'm so glad I did. Yeah. The time I spent in Arizona and Wyoming and Utah profoundly changed me for many reasons, not just for the book project, but in the experiences I had there. But I was at the Grand Canyon on our way to go through the locations in Utah that were important to your life. And I had been watching tumbleweeds fly across, you know, the highways as I was driving, and watching just the incredible, what the Navajo call the big wind, which is just puts this incredible coral colored, you know, dust and dirt that just flies across the highway with these tumbleweeds. And that coral colored wind or vermilion colored wind really stuck in my head as a theme. And Marcia always encouraged me, whatever it was, just empty our head of it. We'll use it for something. And Coral Winds Media was born out of those images of driving through these areas. But also, I was standing in line at the Grand Canyon getting coffee, and all of a sudden the phrase tumbleweed blues came to me. And I'm like, I got it. That's perfect. And as soon as tumbleweed blues, because I'd been watching it and thinking of your story, that ends up being chapter 1. And then while I'm having this moment, I'm listening to this incredible Navajo flute music. And I immediately try to Shazam it. It doesn't work. So then I buy the CD. And the song I was listening to was called Dancing on a Teardrop. I'm like, oh my God. That's how you describe what you do. You're dancing on teardrops. So all these beautiful things kept coming and when I went to Kemmerer, Wyoming, and as I'm leaving, all these wild animals cross my path as a double rainbow occurs in a clear sky. And so all these beautiful things kept on happening that were inspiring the book. And I felt very much like the forces of the universe were on our side to get this project out. So that's my little woo-woo moment for you guys. Anna's got another question.
Less of a question, really, more just to say, for me, the world that I work in, so I work with people that deliver services to people experiencing domestic abuse, sexual violence, child sexual abuse. And so often, even people that have worked in that profession for so long, they don't have any lived experience of their own. And that's reminiscent, I think, when we look at, I think the lady that, Marcia, the quote that you read from the social worker, it's kind of, it transcends borders because it's representative of what we have here in the UK as well. And it's just, this is a book that I would wish everybody that works in those fields would read, because some of the key questions and some of the key barriers to being able to deliver the right services and the right support to people is that people that haven't lived through it cannot understand how you might love the person that's harming you. And like when you spoke about your father, you know, that despite all of the things that he did to you, how much you loved him and what an amazing dancer he was, and how that was a real issue around Jerry because Jerry couldn't dance. So, like, and reading that and just the things that you pick out.
He couldn't dance.
Couldn't dance. And that was your big, like, that's the bad bit about this guy. He can't dance. But, you know, like,
he was so good looking.
Yeah,
so
and how you can be so overwhelmed and consumed by somebody that causes you so much harm. I was infatuated with the person, you know, my son's father, who abused me and raped me and did all these awful things, but I was locked into that cycle, and people couldn't understand, how can you love that person when they do these things to you? And they still don't understand it. And I think sometimes when women, particularly women, and it happens to men as well, are seeking that support, they know they need to get out. But it's such a process of coming to that. You've got to go slowly with them and walk with them and accept that there's love there, even though it's not healthy love. It's still a form of love, and love is the most powerful emotion, and it can cause the most amount of harm. And this is a book that I will be promoting to all of our services here and encouraging anybody working in this field to read, because I think you have to understand what that feels like. And this book, there's no choice but to understand what it feels like in this book, because it's so raw and unfiltered. So I just want you to know that it spans a long period of your life, but it is as relevant now as it would have been then.
Yes.
Thank you, Anna.
Yes.
The first manuscript that I penciled out before Heidi got involved, it was in third person. You know, Judy went here, this happened to Judy. And then when Heidi got together with me, she decided, and we both together decided, putting more of it in Judy's words. That was so critical, because it brings you right into Judy, as opposed to looking at her. You're feeling what Judy's feeling because it's in her own words, and it just made it fantastic.
I love the bit where you spoke about when you lived in the different like the cabins, and you had a group of friends that were all wives, all at home with children, all experiencing abuse, and it was all just the norm, and you all just accepted it. And the way the language you use is just it. Well, often what we see in these types of stories when people retell them or try to give examples is it's over dramatized, and actually when you're in it, it's your everyday. It's not a shocking, awful thing. It's just your life. And people try to make that into something scary to be able to understand it. And I love the fact that in this, you're just so like, this is what I know, you know, and you've broken a cycle of abuse.
Yeah, this is your life.
Your lifetime. So
yes, I did. Enough is enough. Yeah.
I love all those observations and comments. They're just so incredible. And as you heard about the second level, we'll be trying to do the film. Well, Heidi has a third level, and it's the musical. And you can bet the Clark Holmes number with all these gorgeous young women and their abusive husbands commiserating and bitching about their men. I have song titles ready. We're good to go, huh, Judy?
Yes.
I want to read. We have a lovely gentleman named Alan who sent a message that he wants me to share with you. And I hope I can get through it without crying. For Judy, and a quote from her book, I always managed to find my own sunshine beyond the clouds. There was always a little hope there. And that is one of my favorite themes of the book, but I want you to hear what Alan has to say about that quote. By sharing your experiences, you are the sunshine. You have blown away the clouds and have provided hope for others. Inspirational woman. So I just wanted to share that with you,
Make
Judy.
me cry. That's
Me too. Me too.
What a way to say it. Yes. Blow it away. Blow it away.
What a great way to end this beautiful hour. I do have one more passage I would like to read, but we have time for another comment or question. Tanya, do you want to say anything? No
Oh,
pressure.
it's fine. I was gonna add to Gina's just about the food thing, and I mentioned that in the book as well. And you know, just that's probably one of the reasons why she's so healthy, is because she just eats old food, and it's, you know, good for her gut and everything. And I mean, we would eat some of her old food, and I would get like sick, and then she would just be fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
now
true.
it passed on to us too, though, because I eat old food all the time, and we all eat from each other's plates, and we just think it's normal. But other
Yeah,
people look at
that's
us like
true.
we're crazy. But just thank you for this book, and finally her life has, you know, come to life. And like I said, she always told us tidbits growing up, and it was just amazing to hear, and just how she came out of it, and a lot of, you know, childhood trauma, and that children can get through it with resilience, and that's what she did, and just the love that she has and to give. And I think a big thing of it is just her love.
Thank you for that.
Yes, yes.
Clearly her children reflect right back
Oh,
to her.
I
Huh,
love
Judy?
my children. Oh, I love my children. Yes.
It's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
And they love me. I wish my
Isn't that
boys
nice?
could have been here, because I have the same deep love for them and respect they have for me. So yes, my children is what got me through this. You have to be happy around children, you know, you have to be. So I did for them.
One
My
of my
love.
favorite, beautiful Judy, one of my favorite Judy mantras that I've adopted in my own personal life, because Judy said it over and over again when she was confronted with something that she hadn't experienced before. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. I just did it. So every time I'm confronted with something, and right now I'm working on a campaign as a campaign director, so I'm confronted with things
True.
every 30 seconds, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I did it, you know, like I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to do it.
But I'm doing it.
See where it takes me. I'm going to just
Yeah.
share a couple
Yeah.
other little things. Marcia and I are going to continue working on books. We have another book coming out. It will be markedly different from Judy's book, but it'll also be very disruptive. And we continue to want to put out books that are going to be game changers, that'll change the conversation on whatever they're about. So that's very exciting. So she's really, Marcia in her retirement is going to be rather busy for an indefinite period of time. I don't know, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everybody who participated. This was a really beautiful thing that Susan put together for us. And I'm so glad that the family could be here, and friends of Marcia could be here, and friends of mine could be here, and that we got through the hour safely and beautifully. And Anna, for all your shares. There's
Yes.
one more thing I would like to read before we say our goodbyes, unless anybody has one other thing they want to say. Are we good?
Tell her about the tours.
Okay, I think Bud might have just said something. I just want to read the last paragraph, because just as I was proud of the first page, I'm proud of the last page, and I'm proud of Judy and Marcia and her kids and everybody. It begins, ghost stories. People aren't born broken. Something happens to them. Judy doesn't know what was wrong with the people who brought her into this world, but she chooses to love them. Every day is a haunting. The dead still haunt Judy, ghosting from faded photographs and pictures etched vividly in her mind, whispering to her things they couldn't tell her when they still walked among the living, secrets they took with them, clutched in their hearts and bones. The dead whisper, the dust of hearts and bones, as they unburdened from the grave. Judy wants to be an angel. She's trying.
I am.
She's there.
I am.
I am going to go ahead and ask everyone to, if I can figure out how to do this, to unmute themselves and just say hello or goodbye or whatever they'd like to do.
Oh, actually, I do want to say I'm, really thankful for everyone who came and for you guys for writing this book. And I'm so grateful for Anna, who is staying up late in England to do this call. And you guys were just really amazing and wonderful, and just congratulations on the book and all the success. And it's too bad Wid, who's our books guru and our Amazon guru, he is actually undergoing the treatment. He had prostate surgery a couple weeks ago, so he's like had to go to an appointment. But this has been a fantastic team and an amazing project. And again, Anna, thank you so much for joining us. And Judy, thank you for your amazing story and willingness to tell it. And
Absolutely.
Everybody who's helping push this book and this project forward, we really, really, really appreciate it.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
And may this be the beginning of some great things with this beautiful team that we assembled. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here and celebrating our very first Wretch Like Me book celebration. And one thing I didn't say is Judy and her husband Bud just picked up an RV, and they're going to be doing a book tour through the Great Basin, and they're going to film it, and we're going to find a lot of that on our website, Coral Winds Media, as well as Facebook and various TikToks and whatever else there are going to be. Judy's going to be taking the world by storm.
Yes.
Hi, Bud. Thank you so much, you guys.
Yay.
Thank you,
Bye. Love you, Mom.
everybody, for
I
being
miss you,
here.
girls.
Love you,
I
Mama.
know.
You too.
I miss
Call
you.
me.
I love
Bye,
you.
Tanya. Bye, Gina.
Be safe, you guys. Love you. Nice to meet
Love you.
everybody.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.